Fund Financial, Phil McCoy. Philip, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, guys. How are you all?
Doing well. Are you atop a mountain this morning and hanging the laundry, Phil? What's going on there, man?
No, sir. I'm just driving in, getting ready to pull off my exit going to work. I was up late last night watching the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I stayed up till the bitter end, and I will yawn a few times during the show as a result of that. And I wouldn't say it was a bitter end because I did pick the Chiefs to lose in that game, as did most of the people on the talk show here, by the way. I think we all were suspicious of Kansas City's repeated Houdini acts during the season and impressed by Philadelphia's strength.
Yeah, that wasn't much of a game. And as I was just telling Dylan, for a little bit, I thought I saw the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs offense looked very familiar to me. And I wondered, I was like, did they get special counsel in those 2 weeks off? Where's Matt Canada and Arthur Smith? They've got to be on that sideline somewhere because that looked really familiar.
There's a lot of Kenny Pickett hate floating around out of the Pittsburgh area this morning because Pickett got in at the end of the game. For the last two series. I think he did the kneel downs, and he had the series before that. And let me tell you this. I harbor no hatred toward Kenny Pickett. As a matter of fact, you're a sad human being if you're sitting around trying to hate on Kenny Pickett because, listen to this. The guy makes more money in one game as a backup quarterback than the vast majority of the keyboard tough guys out there who are running him down. His wife's better looking than yours. His life's better than yours.
Oh, whoa. What are you going to my wife like that for?
You know?
Where'd that come from?
I don't know. I don't think you put out any Kenny Pickett hate on social media last night, Phil. That's who I'm talking about.
No, I didn't. I did not. I wouldn't say I hate him. I mean, I just don't like him. I saw his one pass attempt, and that looked familiar as well. But I don't dislike the guy. I'm kind of glad he's gone. Quite honestly, I had a lot of hope for him, but
he was not good.
A good home.
He was not good in Pittsburgh, but in his defense,
he's found a good home.
Name
good
another quarterback
in
Pittsburgh under Matt Canada who was good. Think about that. Think about any quarterback since Ben hurt his elbow who succeeded in that offensive system. Even looked good for, I think Mason Rudolph looked good for a game or two. But nobody's sustained that over the course of even half a season. We've gone through, 7 quarterbacks who've come in and taken a snap since Ben hurt his elbow? It's not a good system. And I don't care who the OC is. It ain't a good system.
Certainly watching the Eagles last night let you know how far away everybody else is because, man, that was impressive. And on the line play, there's not a whole lot of talk about that, but the way their offensive and defensive line absolutely dominated that game that was impressive. And as an old offensive lineman, those guys they look good. That was good. And so the only thing to debate today is which I've never really gotten to halftime shows. But I hear a lot of debate about the halftime show. No one that I know liked it. But,
if you only know old white guys, you don't know anybody who liked it then.
Great time to go make a sandwich.
Yeah, because you're an old white guy.
That's kind of what I've always done.
Dylan liked it,
that's
right?
What I've always done.
Dylan, you liked it, didn't you?
My first ever concert I went to was Kendrick Lamar. Yeah. He is one of my two favorite musicians. I was a big fan of the film.
I texted Colin. Colin was at the game. He said it was great. But if you're an old white dude, I'm sure you didn't like it.
Well, I don't. I had no opinion because I'm like what John just said. It's time to go do something. Go get something to eat or go back down the hatches for bed or whatever it may be. I rarely, if ever, watch the halftime shows except for Snoop Dogg. The Snoop Dogg show last year was pretty good. My wife said, "Hey, it's Snoop," and I came in there to watch.
Yeah, because that goes back 30 years. You can remember Snoop Dogg from when you were younger.
Yeah. What about the commercials, Phil? Did you any that you liked?
You know what? I didn't. There were some strange commercials. The flesh hat freaked me out for the rest of the night.
That did freak me out.
I don't even know what that was a commercial about, but man, that was odd.
What was the flesh hat commercial about?
Tubi.
TBI. Yeah. That would make me not watch that channel just because of how weird that was.
Starring Seal.
That bothered me too.
Yeah.
I didn't like that at
What
all.
about Harry Meets Sally? Or Sally Meets Harry? 35 years.
You're right the first time.
Yeah.
Harry.
Yeah.
I
can't say that I saw that was the mayonnaise commercial.
Yeah, the mayo
one?
mayonnaise. Yeah,
the mayonnaise
exactly.
commercial.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little risque for nighttime TV, but a few commercials were. The breast cancer commercial was. My wife and I were watching this and was like, "What in the world is this commercial for?" And then
I thought it was the Victoria's Secret commercial.
Well, that was that. It started out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I didn't know what.
I thought it was effective.
But
You remembered it.
Yeah, we have. Well, yeah, I remember it.
It was effective.
there was a heart-tugging commercial for Pfizer, which was the cancer-surviving boy doing the Rocky Run.
Yep.
Which I thought was very affecting. I think it was Google Pixel that had the guy that was doing the job interview by stating all the stuff that he did as a dad raising his kid. I thought that was kind of tear-jerking. I like the ones that have the emotional impact. My favorite of the whole thing was the Harrison Ford Jeep ad.
I like that one a lot.
I'm a Jeep owner.
I like Harrison Ford a ton too. I kind of like the fact that he whispered his last name, despite the fact that my last name is Ford.
Yes,
right.
But the quote out of that is, "The most sacred thing in life isn't the path; it's the freedom to choose it," which I thought was really.
Ken Mattson said the girls' football commercial. I didn't like that. I thought that was just
pandering,
hokey, pandering. I thought that was just like a lowest common denominator. Let's show a girl beating a boy in sports. I didn't
know that was a thing, so it did teach me something, and I'm certainly not opposed to it. But the commercial seemed to take a really long time. It took me a long time to figure out what that commercial was all about. Way
too much time. But it's about girls flag football, which is a varsity sport in Maryland, but it is not yet in West Virginia.
Didn't know that.
Is that correct, Dylan?
Did not know that.
Are there any flag football girls high school teams in West Virginia yet, Dylan?
Not that I know of.
Right. So I think they said 35 states don't currently have something for girls varsity flag football.
And Chris Montgomery points out the sloth commercials for Coors beer. I thought it was a cute one.
Amusing,
it's cute, yeah.
Everybody likes a good sloth commercial.
I got to tell you, the game was on like 12 hours ago. I don't think I could have told you a commercial that I saw last night. I couldn't have remembered one. I think I don't know.
Yeah.
We're past the era of the peak Super Bowl commercials, I think.
That's very true, and there's a reason for that. And there's an ad agency that I think there was a question about that a couple of years ago when the commercials stopped getting funny and edgy. And they said the reason is because everybody's afraid to offend anybody anymore, so it really cuts down on creative. You have to be much more dialed in as to a message instead of trying to be funny, because humor can offend people.
If we can embargo, just go for a year or two without having any of the Mannings in a commercial and going without Ben Affleck or Matt Damon in a commercial.
I did like the Matt Damon commercial.
I like both of those commercials.
I like the Mannings. The Mannings crack me up. I don't know why, but I think Peyton Manning is hilarious. I like Eli Manning.
I agree.
I do. I've always thought that those guys were hilarious.
Because it's the older brother, younger brother dynamic.
Yeah.
It is just like all nostalgia, kind of, because I feel like I like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, but it is, anytime I see them together in an ad like that, it's kind of like they're going, hey, you guys remember Good Will Hunting? You remember them?
Mm-hmm.
You remember these guys? Remember them? The Mannings. You remember them?
Yep. Yeah, I don't think that's off. What was the Matt Damon commercial about or for? What was the product? Does anybody remember?
I don't know.
I remember I was amused by it, but I don't remember what it was
I feel like
about.
that's the other thing with the ads now is like a minute, like 30 or 60 seconds of
it was
something.
David
Stella
Artois.
Stella Artois, that's it.
For the first 29 or 59 seconds, you don't know what the commercial's for, and then they flash a logo at the end. And like, oh, that was a beer commercial?
Yes.
Okay.
Coors.
And then the Clydesdale horse. That was heart-tugging.
So
I would like them to bring back the Clydesdale football commercials and also the Clydesdale Christmas commercials from Budweiser. I would like to see those Christmas commercials.
The one that made me feel warm and fuzzy, it was for Instacart that had all of the old food brand mascots.
Yes, that was pretty cool.
I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I like that one too. That was creative.
I wonder how much many licensing contracts had to be signed in order to make that happen.
Lawyers had been working overtime on that one.
The Green Giant was there. Mr. Clean was there.
Mr. Clean's one of the great iconic advertising logos of all time. And you see, who doesn't recognize Mr. Clean when you see Mr. Clean?
I have used that to describe a character because it's the easiest. It brings everybody knows exactly what he looks like, and you don't need to spend a paragraph describing it.
Right.
And it was not you that he was describing, Rob.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. There's a few more years. Financial Phil, let's talk money. Because
let's do it. Let's talk money.
Market futures are up this morning in the green. Everybody is up around 0.5% or more. Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ. This after a difficult Friday that saw the major indices lose around 1% or more. What's the difference this morning?
I don't know. And what we talked about this morning at 6:30, and it seems to be the same story so far early in 2025, is we've had these big sell-off days, and most of the time they've occurred on Mondays. Think of DeepSeek and then the tariff news that everybody knew was coming. That still kind of baffles me. But every time we have one of those days, everybody swoops in and buys the dip. So there's a level of support on in all three indices, and it really seemingly all asset classes, that when we have these sell-offs, and it has been a really volatile 2025, and I wouldn't expect that to change. There's a lot of changes going on and a lot of information to absorb as we go on, especially with tariffs and what does it all mean, and will they remain? Will the tariffs remain, or is it just a bargaining chip? And there's many different opinions on tariffs if they remain and what it means to the Federal Reserve. And we'll get some of that information later on this week. And we have CPI this weekend, and it comes back to the same old story. Okay, so we're going to talk about tariffs, but what's tariffs' impact on inflation, and what will the Federal Reserve have to say if these tariffs hang around, and of course the retaliatory tariffs that come along with it. But extremely volatile, but it does look really familiar so far. It seems to be the same story throughout 2025, where there is some market support. And as you look from beginning to end, it doesn't feel this way to me, and I don't think it feels this way to a lot of clients either, or your portfolios, but it's been a pretty decent year for our equities so far. I mean, it's very early, but so far in 2025, it's been pretty decent because of these days, so we get fearful a sell-off, and it's a reminder, not to let your emotions get away with you, because there's been plenty of people that have thought, this is the beginning of a bear market, and this is the beginning of a 25% fall, and the very next day we gain half of it back, and then the following day we gain the rest of it back, and we keep chugging along. So very volatile, but there's a lot of support for on the equity side that everybody keeps rolling in and buying the dips.
Phil, let me go to an area of speculation, and we discussed this a little bit on last Friday. There's some thought that President Trump would like to move the organizations such as the Federal Reserve, FCC, more closely aligned underneath the executive branch. In your community, have you heard that mentioned at all?
We've heard it mentioned, and I don't know that there's a whole lot of support for it, but I think especially in the Federal Reserve, we talk about the Federal Reserve a lot and their impact and control really over our economy during inflationary or disinflationary periods, and the power that they yield. And I think it's really important. And one of the reasons why I've cheered Jerome Powell over in the past, and I may be the only one that's done that, but because of their bipartisan stance. A lot of times during he was appointed in Trump's first administration, so he's been through Republican, Democrat, and now back to Republican, and he does, to me anyway, and maybe I'm wrong, I've been wrong before, but to me he remains steadfast, and he doesn't cave to the pressure from the executive branch, and I think that's extremely important, because we don't want those decisions to be political. We don't want those decisions to be something that says, "Hey, I'm a Democrat or Republican, and it does me good. It helps my numbers. It helps our party if the markets do well. So therefore, Federal Reserve cut rates, and then the reaction is cutting rates." Now, there's pressure, of course. There's pressure, but I'm still hoping that they do what they believe is best for our economy in this battle against inflation, instead of a partisan decision on what is best.
Yeah, I think most everybody agrees with you on that, Phil. The concern that some folks have, and I'm falling in this category, that it's all going to be litigated, and it falls under the court decision to see how closely dominated, if you will, organizations such as Federal Reserve are by the executive branch.
Yeah, and that's not something like your original question, if it's gotten to our community, meaning financial advisors, financial planners, or in the stock market. Not that I've seen where that's been a fear on the radar. Currently, as we look out ahead of us, it's still the same old story when it comes to the Federal Reserve is what they're going to do with rates, and hopefully that they stay bipartisan in those decisions. But nothing that is of concern from a financial advisor standpoint or from our market experts. That's never been mentioned.
Thank you.
I'm going to blindside you with something that just popped up on my news feed, Wall Street Journal. Apparently, it costs us nearly 3 cents to mint a penny. And Trump has told the U.S. Treasury to stop minting pennies, and we will save literally 2 cents
on every penny.
On every penny. Thoughts? I mean, does that have an immediate inflationary?
I'm hoarding pennies,
effect?
so I look forward to this. So I can turn a bunch of pennies in.
John, I don't know. That's amazing to me, though. Is that accurate? Did it
Yes.
cost 3 cents to make a penny?
I had heard 2 cents.
Well, it says over 2 cents. So
Either way.
yeah.
Either way, is it 1.1 cent to make a penny? Because if so, I don't know if I'm qualified to make this statement, but if that's the case, then yes, stop making pennies. Stop making them. It does seem kind of pointless, but I wouldn't think that it would have an inflationary or disinflationary impact.
But doesn't that make the next coin? The next coin is a nickel, so doesn't that make automatically at least a 5 cent increase on everything?
Great Britain did this a few years ago. I forgot what the
Did
lowest.
they really?
Yeah.
This is something
Yeah.
You're right. It
You're right, they
blindsided me,
did.
and I have
Yeah.
no opinion, but
And-
that's news I didn't
Go
know.
ahead.
It's kind of amazing to me.
Yeah, I've forgotten what the lowest denomination they had, but whatever the lowest denomination was, they got rid of it.
Round everything up. So I just searched this, and it says the cost to make a penny is 3.07 cents, but the cost to make a nickel is 11.54 cents. So you lose more money the more money you make. Think about that. I haven't searched on the dime or the quarter yet, but if it costs like 50 cents to make a quarter, then I think we can explain the debt a lot easier than people think.
And I've got a water jug. You know the water jugs, the filtered water. I've got one about 3/4 full of pennies. I think I need to go sell that thing. They're going to stop
That's what I was
making them.
saying.
I might have a gold mine there.
Well, unfortunately, you only get a penny for
I was
your
going
pennies.
to say,
yeah.
you will not get 3 cents for each one of them, Phil.
I want the 3 cents. If they're not going to make them anymore, I want the 3 cents.
A new commodity.
Okay, we're in good shape.
That's the intrinsic value of a penny is 3 cents.
It costs 5.3 cents to mint a dime, and it costs 11.63 cents to mint a quarter. It costs 26 cents to mint a half a dollar. So you're still up okay on the dime, the quarter, and the half a buck. But you're losing money on every nickel and penny.
We're in the hole.
Well, the nickel's the big
Stop
loser.
making nickels and pennies, I guess.
That's the deal. So no more sales tax. 'Cause that's the only reason why you need those things. I think Brad Knoll just gave it. I heard him screaming from the Back Creek Valley. Yes, yes, Mario for president. Phil, so I was reading this article, and I kind of I'm a numbers guy, math guy, so I kind of like to look at these sorts of things. In regards to the historical stock market cycle, right? The cycle of a presidential cycle in regards to the stock market. So it says, in general, the first year after a presidential election often sees markets experience a dip as the new president implements policies and reforms. The second year, known as the midterm election year, is typically the weakest year, characterized by increased volatility due to political uncertainty. The third year, or pre-election year, usually stands out as the strongest for stock market performance. Finally, in the fourth year or election year, market performance can vary as investors react to campaigns and potential policy changes. What do you think about that interpretation of the 4-year presidential cycle in regards to investing?
Well, I'm going to take you to the efficient market hypothesis, which is kind of what all financial, I wouldn't say all, but out of this office anyway, what we believe in and what we go by, which says all technical information is hogwash, and you can't predict future outcomes by technical information, but rather by fundamentals of individual companies, and that it will eventually catch up. So you've heard us say a few times that the corporate stock market will follow corporate profits, and then we pause a little bit and say eventually, and that is true. It does follow corporate profits eventually. It doesn't do it immediately always, but it is at the root cause of our stock market and the movements of it. It moves volatility on a daily, weekly, sometimes a monthly basis based off of what we perceive or what we think is a policy or what someone says or what the current environment is going to do to a company. But eventually that all swings back around when corporate profits are announced, and we dig into that. And we should, anyway, we don't always, but we should reset what we had done throughout that last quarter. It's like, well, we thought that NVIDIA is going to make this much money, but instead they made that much money, so therefore it's not worth what it's been selling for, or it's been worth more than what it's been selling for. Now, that's a very fundamental approach to trading stocks, and it doesn't always work out that way. A lot of times, and I dare to say here recently, most of the time, we listen more to their guidance after earnings is announced and what they think is going to happen or what they predict is going to happen. So we go from one prediction to another opposed to stopping at what fundamentally happened. But when you look at these companies and you price them out, and that's why a lot of our portfolios is based off of, I use this term with pennies, intrinsic value. And is this worth what it's trading for? Is this worth what it's selling for? And not to put a perception into it. But what you had just mentioned it is fascinating, but it is also technical analysis. Sometimes it's correct and sometimes it's not. We just don't trade off of technical analysis, and we don't put things in our portfolio based off of that. And you've heard us say a lot of times, John and I both, that we don't do things with our portfolio based off who the president is or who we expect the president to be, but instead, are companies making money? And if so, and which is most of the time always, which companies are making money? We may lean into one that is favored by tax law or a sector, I should say, not an individual company, but a sector that is favored by tax law or corporate tax law or what consumer taxes may be, where I guess we're kind of digging into politics a little bit, but it's more so what is in favor, and then we will rely on our portfolio managers to take care of that. And most of the time, it's not technical analysis, but we'll refer to it as in the past, but it's not something that we trade off.
All right, I got a minute left, Phil. Who wins the Super Bowl next year?
Man, I'm so glad that you asked that. And we've got a new football fanatic in the crowd with John Gilstrap texting us last night, and it just warmed my heart. I felt like we brought someone into the football frame. He doesn't have a team yet, I'm assuming. He doesn't have a favorite team. So I'm going to throw this out there. And everybody knows what I'm getting ready to say, man. Those Pittsburgh Steelers will win the Super Bowl next year.
I'm shocked.
Renewed. Everybody is 0-0. Let's go Steelers. Go Steelers.
All right. Dylan.
I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to do it. I don't know how.
Dylan, who wins the Super Bowl next year?
That's a tough one. The Baltimore Ravens, though.
That would make sense.
There you go.
Evan Warrell went with his Carolina
fandom.
Panthers, right? Dylan's going with him. Colin will tell me Washington. I think Detroit wins it next year. I think you got to knock on the door a couple times before you get in, and once you knock on the door enough times, you got the experience to get over the hump and get in. So I'm taking Detroit next year.
I like that.
All right?
Go Steelers.
I also wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens won it next year. That would not be a shock to me. They're one of the preseason favorites.
Boo.
I don't know if I can trust the hardball teams anymore, actually. The Lions is a good pick.
Hey, we're out of time. Let's talk radio. WNR Martinsburg and TV 10.